far is it that President Park's career coming to an end from the presidential office? Professor Hwang.
Well, I think it's very, very clear that this is a tremendous crisis in leadership for her. However, I do believe that she will try to stay in office as much as possible. She will not easily give up. That has been one of the hallmarks of her leadership. But she is essentially a lame duck president. There is no doubt.
What do you make of it, Ms. Lim? At this moment, South Korea seems to need to have a very strong leader, but at this moment, as Professor Hwang put it, a lame duck.
Yes, as of now, as Professor Hwang already mentioned, as of now, President Park Geun-hye, she doesn't look like she has some willingness to resign in spite of massive protest. But the thing is, the things are still very fluid, and I have to emphasize this. I mean, this coming weekend, actually, we expect even bigger, massive protest in the middle of Seoul. So probably this weekend can be a kind of real threshold to change any political situations in Korea. So let's just pay attention to what's going on this weekend.
Besides the degrees of anger and also demonstration on the streets, there are possible impacts on the overall political atmosphere. Professor Hwang, at this moment, what political tools, or even tools that she could have, personal tools, she can grab to or reach to so that could help her to save her political office?
Well, there's several different components, and it's quite important to understand that first of all, the Korean Peninsula right now is in a very precarious situation in terms of the regional environment, and it has been for the last several years. And in fact, Park Geun-hye's leadership, her popularity, has been strong precisely because she has done well, or at least the public has supported, her strong foreign policies. But domestically, she has not been able to do much of what she promised, which is completely change around the economy, restructure, reform the chaebol. And I think the anger that we're seeing in the public is actually global. We saw it in the United States. There are deep divisions in society, and countries all across the world, whether they're democracies or non-democracies, many people in society feel disenfranchised, very angry and frustrated with their leaders. And but it's actually a very dangerous situation for Korea.
Of course, this is a social division that we are seeing in other countries as well, but this time it's erupted because of an apparent scandal involving the president. So she would necessarily be the one who is going to be blamed, of course. So what do you make of it, Ms. Lim? Does she have much political tools and help at this time?
Unfortunately, again, as the other panelists already pointed out, it looks like she already fell into the lame duck situations. Of course, there are many different options can be, but still things are fluid. For example, opposition party, they recommended that, probably she can just be playing as a state head, and she can just focus on the diplomatic affairs only, whereas the cabinet members and the prime minister appointed prime minister can be dealing with all this domestic affairs. That can be another kind of alternative scenario. But again, the timing is not that good either, because as we all know, I mean, the next December we have to have the presidential election. It can be probably a little bit earlier, but again, I cannot actually precisely predict what's going on, in the coming months. But as of now, again, she doesn't look like has many political tools to deal with this turmoil, unfortunately.
Mr. Yang in Beijing, of course, the President Park in South Korea has put forward some of the recommendations on her own for the candidacy of the Prime Minister. She also asked the Congress if they have anyone to suggest. She would also like to hear the suggestions. Of course, she's in a very agreeing mood, understanding her political position right now. So is that likely another person going to help her to stay where she is and eventually, when she's strong again politically, come back again?
Well, from external observer point of view, no qualified or strong enough person who can play a pillar for the current crisis cabinet, for the lame duck cabinet. In my understanding, lame duck not only for the president, but also, I'm afraid, lame duck for the cabinet. And the problem is, South Korea now is facing challenges, both domestically and external. So there's a break of governance, policy making from now to the next presidency. So that produce a lot of uncertainties, not only affecting the South Korea itself, but also affecting this region to some degree.
Yes, indeed. To say the least, she is not, Professor Hwang, going to attend the APEC summit, which is an extremely important event. So South Korea, at this moment, particularly with the Korean nuclear crisis, peninsula nuclear crisis, needs to play a strong role in some of the regional discussions. What would be her absence mean for the regional's capability to deal with the situation? The situation, Professor Hwang, if I could put just a few words before you answer the question, lay a little bit of groundwork for you. The U.S. presidential election, they have a new president. That president has not been favoring alliance with some of the neighbors in Asia. And also the Korean Peninsula nuclear issue has been always on the verge of exploding once again. Meanwhile, you also see other issues, moving factors in the region. So at this moment, what would that mean?
Yes, I think what we have is almost a situation of a so-called perfect storm, where all of these very difficult uncertainties are all coming together almost at the same time. I think it is a tremendous blow to South Korea to not have Park Geun-hye be able to attend APEC. Not because APEC itself is substantively important, but the symbol of South Korea being a significant global and regional power. Her absence is really a very, very tremendous blow. The problem is that Park Geun-hye faces the same kind of profound difficulties and challenges of governments and societies all around the world, whether democracies or non-democracies.
Right.
You have societies and people that are very frustrated and angry. They want strong leadership, but at the same time, they're very suspicious, and they don't like leaders who take too much, who are too secretive, who are too corrupt, and have too much power. So it's very, very difficult to find any kind of leader to be able to emerge to lead such a country. Even here in the United States, you see the outcome in this election.
Well,
two very unpopular candidates.
Right, but this is a special. This is the time we are facing right now. It's a time of internet. It's a time of WikiLeaks. So this is the time that the politicians have to face. If they're strong enough, if they're clean enough, they will be able to face it. Well, whether they are or not, it is a test time. Ms. Lim, what do you make of it? I mean, about South Korea's policy capabilities now of dealing with the Korean Peninsula nuclear issue, of dealing with some of the important issues with its neighbor, including with China.
Yeah, actually, all those diplomatic affairs, that's main concern, of course, as you guys indicated, the absence of President Park Geun-hye at the APEC meeting is definitely frustrating, and not just frustrating, it can have further negative effects on the upcoming diplomatic affairs too. That is again my major concern as well. But even though we do see this kind of power vacuum situations, but hopefully it should be pretty temporary, and we do have other institutionalized mechanism. For example, ROK-US alliance is not just about the personal friendship between the two top of the states. Rather than that, it has been institutionalized system. So we do have more like manpower networks. It's very dense, very deep, very old, traditionally very robust. So I want to remain as optimistic as I can, thanks to this kind of dense network between the alliances, and even with the China as well. It is not only about the friendship with between the President Xi Jinping and the President Park Geun-hye. It's much more than that. So I want to I want to just remain optimistic as much as possible, because I trust the human networks, dense human networks, and other positive positive things too.
Mr. Yang,
Yes.
this is not only a friendship between the two presidents, but also some concerns from Chinese side because of South Korea's decision to work with the United States on certain issues. So with a lame duck president, with the concerns still out there, and with the timetable running out of almost any space, what does China make of the current situation? Can China still negotiate and discuss with Seoul about some of the issue of concerns? Can China still bring South Korea, with its capabilities, of course, to work on the Korean Peninsula nuclear issue?
Well, it's a really difficult question to China. Theoretically, now the situation is quite more complicated. The more complicated the situation, the more necessity for cooperation, coordination, cooperation on the complicated issue between China and South Korea. However, as we mentioned earlier, the other side has been a lame duck, something like lame duck. So the effectiveness about the cooperation and the coordination will be certainly reduced. For example, next month there will be another round of China, Japan, ROK state heads meeting in Japan. It's not easy to restore this meeting, and we, before the scandal, we had a very good expectation about the upcoming trilateral, but now our expectation dramatically low because of the crisis in South Korea, because of we really, frankly speaking, we really doubt the capability of the current President Park and her government, what he can do, what he cannot do. We are not sure. So great uncertainties that affect the effective and the real cooperation and the communication.
This also brings us to the topic that Professor Hwang earlier mentioned, that is the quality of the leadership these days. In the time of internet, and of course their authority are being challenged all the time. But the thing is, what would that mean for us when we think about the qualities of leadership for tomorrow, for the future? When we select, when the constituencies go out there and try to choose their leaders, President Park has been claiming herself to be the people's daughter. She served the country. That is the marriage she had. And also, she opened her multi-million-dollar home to the reporters to do and take a look, to show I am frugal, having a frugal lifestyle, I am definitely clean, and I'm with the people. But then one piece of news certainly clashed all of the previous impressions that the public have about her, and probably even more because she claimed to be clean. And that's probably even more damage to her than someone who did not claim to be absolutely clean. So, Professor Hwang, what kind of questions does that pose us about leadership and the qualities of leadership, Professor Hwang?
Well, first of all, I think, again, in the future, it makes leaders extremely difficult for any leader to be effective, precisely as you say, because of the increasing pressures and transparency. Having said that, I think there's something else that is far more deeper that is behind the South Korean anger. It's not just about Park Geun-hye herself. She clearly has made some poor personal judgments. But I think rather it's a symbol of how South Koreans feel frustrated about deep-seated, profound corruption and lack of transparency in the South Korean system itself, broadly speaking. So socially and also in the business world and in the economy.
What are you
the
talking
education
about
system.
specifically?
Well, specifically the connections between, for example, this woman, Che, who is under fire. It seems she is clearly the one that has conducted illegal activities. There is no evidence thus far that President Park herself has actually done anything illegal. Poor judgment, yes, nothing illegal. But the corruption and the connections of this woman, Che, who used her pressure behind the scenes to pressure the major chaebol for donations and to funnel money, I think these are the kinds of practices that South Koreans are very, very deeply unhappy about and represent kind of the old system. And they want this to change. And many South Koreans expected this to change. But as we see, it's very difficult to undo these kinds of systems.
Ms. Lim, President Park came into office claiming herself to be a conservative. You know, whether it's her dress styles or her interactions, you know, the way she presented herself, in a way resembling her mother. All these is trying to link to her political identity of being a conservative and very strong on foreign policy, going to the traditional way. But eventually this didn't work out. So what would that mean for South Korean politics? Even South Koreans' own international policies for the near future, let's just say for the next year, for the next term of presidency, is that suggesting a dramatic change of style as a result? Ms. Lim.
Yes, yeah, we did observe so many those nostalgia phenomena, as you pointed out already. Many Korean peoples missed when the country was glorious, especially under the President Park Geun-hye, Park Geun-hye's father's, that period, that administration, the South Korean countries, that economy was ascendant. So we always missed the time. But the thing is, the flip side of that period is, it was actually the timing of creating all these roots of the corruption. Because at the time, the so-called developmental dictatorship or developmental state patronized the nation champions like conglomerates, which was actually effective, which was very successful when the country was relatively poorer or underdeveloped, or when the country was focusing on the development only. But we all now know that kind of mechanism cannot be sustainable in this 21st century. You know, now the global market is much more competitive, and we cannot actually dictate whatever those direction. I mean, the state cannot dictate the direction. So we totally feel like we have to change. So, but this American election, which was pretty counterintuitive as well. So I don't know how all this global affairs can affect, to the Korean, South Korean domestic situations further. But anyhow, domestically speaking only, I do also hear the Korean people's voice. We have to change this old mechanism. Yes.
Change is being said, anger being expressed, but that is likely really going to solve the problem. That's a big question mark. And secondly, from here to next year's presidential election, too many uncertainties. Mr. Yang, what can China do from China's perspective in order to limit the possibilities of risks to the extent that China could, in a way, provide and help?
Well, China will be very cautious at this moment during this period, during the lame duck period, because any kind of coordination, even disputes between China and South Korea will be evolved into the domestic. So China has to be cautious. But on the other hand, China has to continue the cooperation with South Korea on the denuclearization, on the many other regional issues, including the upcoming trilateral China-Japan and South Korea cooperation. So in short, less effective cooperation, but continue.